Tell me, have you ever wondered why your presence unsettles some men? Even when you say nothing at all. Why a man can spend his entire life chasing women and suddenly freeze when he meets you? It's not your beauty, it's not your confidence, it's not even your standards. It's the undeniable truth that you are not like other women, and somewhere deep inside him, he knows it. Stay with me, because when you hear this until the end, you will finally realize that you are a queen, and it's time to start acting like one. The silence that speaks louder than words. There is a kind of silence a woman carries that cannot be taught, a silence that doesn't come from withholding words, but from understanding that not everything requires a reaction. It is the silence of someone who has seen enough, felt enough, and grown enough to know that peace is not weakness. It is wisdom choosing its own direction. Your silence is not the absence of expression. It is the presence of clarity. You do not rush to fill the air with explanations. You do not scramble to justify your worth. You do not fight to be seen, because you have already seen yourself. This is the part men don't fully understand. When a woman reaches the point where silence becomes her language, it is because she has learned the art of listening inward. You listen to your intuition. You listen to your body. You listen to the gentle shifts of your spirit. And when a woman begins listening inward, the outer world loses its power to control her. There are men who are used to women proving themselves, arguing for attention, pleading for closure, seeking reassurance like it's oxygen. But you breathe differently. Your silence is presence. Your silence is a boundary. Your silence is a mirror that reveals the truth in others. A man who stands before a silent woman like you feels exposed. Not because you judge him, but because your quietness reflects everything he has not confronted in himself. Your stillness becomes the space in which a man hears his own uncertainty, his own hesitation, his own unresolved wounds echoing back at him. And people fear what reveals them more than what challenges them. But here's the part you rarely acknowledge. Your silence is not cold, it is sacred. It is the sanctuary you built inside yourself after life tried to tear you apart. Your silence is the home you created when the world offered you none. It is strength in its purest form, the strength to pause, to choose to conserve your energy, rather than spill it in every direction. And when a man meets a woman who is calm without being passive, quiet without being small, present without being needy, he does not know what to do with her. Because the world taught him how to impress the loud, but not how to honor the serene. Your silence tells a story. I don't need to be louder to be powerful. I don't need to be demanding to be deserving. I don't need to shout to be heard. Your silence speaks for you, in a way louder than any speech you could have given. And perhaps the most beautiful thing about it is that it creates a space where sincerity can finally breathe. Because a man who is meant for you will not try to fill your silence with noise. He will enter it with respect. A man who is not will be overwhelmed by it. Silence doesn't push people away. It simply reveals who can sit with truth. And in this revelation, your journey begins to shift. Because silence has a strange way of refining your energy, which leads us into the next truth waiting for you. Some energies attract without effort, while others exhaust themselves trying. And now we arrive at the reason why your presence draws attention without you ever asking for it. 2. The energy that doesn't beg. There is something undeniably powerful about a woman who no longer negotiates for the bare minimum. A woman who knows her value does not chase validation. She chooses alignment. You no longer enter rooms wondering whether they will accept you. You enter wondering whether the room even deserves you. This shift in energy changes everything. It's not arrogance, it's self-recognition. Your energy no longer says, please choose me. It says, I choose where I invest myself. Men feel this immediately, even if they cannot explain it. because you are not acting from need. You are acting from fullness. And fullness cannot be manipulated. When you stop begging for love, when you stop fighting for scraps of attention, when you stop overgiving in hopes of being noticed, your presence becomes rare. Rare energy terrifies the unprepared, because a woman who does not beg cannot be controlled through withholding. A woman who does not chase cannot be trapped by inconsistency. A woman who does not depend cannot be shaken by someone else's emotional storms. Your energy has become anchored, rooted, steady. This is what draws men toward you, even when you do nothing. You don't perform femininity, you embody it. You don't demand respect, you live in a way that makes disrespect impossible. You don't run after anything. What aligns with you naturally gravitates toward you. There are men who only know how to relate to women, who need reassurance, need attention, need saving. But you are not asking to be saved. You are asking to be met. This difference is everything. Because when a woman carries an energy that doesn't beg, the dynamic shifts from prove something to me to match something within me. A man who steps into your life now is not stepping into a void to fill. He is stepping into a space to honor. This unsettles the ones who relied on emotional imbalance to feel strong, but it awakens the ones who are ready for real connection. You see, the energy that doesn't beg becomes the energy that invites. It invites responsibility. It invites authenticity. It invites consistency, not through pressure, but through resonance. And the ones who cannot rise to the invitation will call you intimidating. But there is nothing intimidating about self-respect. There is nothing overwhelming about self-esteem. There is nothing aggressive about boundaries. It is simply that some men are not used to meeting a woman who refuses to shrink for their comfort. Your energy reshapes the atmosphere around you. And this is the part few people understand. The moment you stop begging, you start attracting the kind of relationship you once believed you had to plead for. And yet, even in this powerful shift, there remains a deeper truth. Not all attention is equal. Not all desire means devotion. Not all attraction means value, which leads you into the next revelation. There is a world of difference between being wanted and being honored. And it is here in this distinction that your true strength becomes undeniable. 3. The difference between being desired and being respected. Desire is easy. Respect is rare. Desire sees your body. Respect sees your worth. Desire wants to touch your skin. Respect wants to guard your soul. Desire takes. Respect protects. The world has conditioned many women to measure their value based on how desired they are. But you have evolved beyond that illusion. You no longer crave the heat of temporary attraction. You crave the warmth of consistent intention. Because desire without respect leads to passion without safety, attention without commitment, presence without accountability. You have lived enough life to know the difference between being pursued and being valued. There are men who will chase you just to soothe the loneliness inside themselves. There are men who will compliment you just to feel powerful for a moment. There are men who will desire you because desire requires no responsibility. But respect is a different world entirely. Respect shows up when feelings fade. Respect remains when circumstances shift. Respect speaks truth when silence is easier. Respect is the kind of love that does not collapse under pressure. And deep down, you are not seeking desire. You are seeking safety, depth, truth. Not the spark that burns quickly, but the flame that sustains. A man may desire many women, but he will only respect the one who awakens his integrity. And that is you, your posture, your boundaries, your clarity. These are not walls. These are invitations for a deeper kind of connection. Men who are still rooted in ego will mistake your strength for challenge. Men who are rooted in spirit will see it as guidance. Respect is the place where a man's soul meets your essence, instead of merely his desire meeting your appearance. And here is the most powerful truth of all. A man who desires you wants to experience you. A man who respects you wants to elevate you. One comes from impulse, the other comes from intention. You belong to the kind of love that comes with intention. And now you stand at a threshold, a moment where everything begins to shift. Because once a woman knows the difference between desire and respect, she can no longer settle for anything less than devotion. And what happens next will change the entire architecture of your relationships. Because the moment you choose respect over desire, your life begins to attract only what mirrors your worth. 4. Your presence is not entertainment. It is alignment. There comes a time in a woman's life when she understands something that once seemed impossible to grasp, that she was never meant to entertain anyone's emptiness, only to awaken the fullness they have forgotten within themselves. Your presence is not a distraction from a man's loneliness. It is not a balm for his boredom, nor a stage where he can project the parts of himself he refuses to acknowledge. Your presence is alignment, a quiet yet powerful reminder of what life feels like when someone lives from a place of truth. You do not enter a man's life as noise. You enter as clarity. You do not enter as entertainment. You enter as elevation. This is why your presence shifts things around him without you even trying. He starts seeing parts of himself he once ignored. He starts questioning the life he settled for. He starts feeling the desire to grow, even if he doesn't understand why, because your energy does not allow stagnation. Your presence carries a softness that calls him to rest, but also a strength that calls him to rise. You are the mirror he didn't know he needed. Not a mirror of his ego, but a mirror of his potential. There are men who will welcome this alignment because they are ready for a life that reflects integrity, responsibility, and depth. And there are men who will resist it because it demands too much of the parts of them still asleep. But understand this: you are not responsible for waking anyone. You are only responsible for shining. Your presence stands as a quiet invitation, an invitation for alignment, not entertainment, an invitation for intentional living, not emotional theatrics, an invitation for truth, not illusion. You no longer allow yourself to be the escape route for someone else's pain. You no longer shapeshift into the version they find convenient. You no longer become the soft landing for someone who refuses to stand on their own feet. Your presence is not meant to fill voids. It is meant to connect souls. And men who mistake you for entertainment often reveal themselves quickly. The ones who disappear when they can no longer use you. The ones who retreat when they realize your depth requires reciprocity. The ones who hoped to borrow your light instead of cultivating their own. But the man aligned with your spirit will not be intimidated by your presence. He will be inspired by it. He will not want you to dim your fire. He will want to rise to meet its warmth. That is the difference between attachment and alignment. One drains you, the other feeds you. And the beautiful thing about alignment is that it reveals truth without effort. You don't have to force it. You don't have to chase it. You don't have to analyze it endlessly. Alignment speaks through feeling, through movement, through the way someone shows up when the initial excitement fades. And when life places you in the presence of someone who is not aligned with your values, your intuition whispers louder, your boundaries step forward, and your spirit gently pulls you back toward your own center. Because alignment protects what entertainment destroys: your peace, your purpose, your self-respect. You are no longer willing to trade those for temporary affection. And just when you think you have fully understood the power of alignment, another truth surfaces from deep within, guiding you toward the next part of your evolution. Alignment sharpens your sight. It allows you to see people not as they present themselves, but as they truly are. And this leads you to one of the most sacred abilities you carry. 5. You see through him. There is a rare kind of woman who sees beneath the surface of a man. She sees not just who he is, but who he is trying not to be. She sees the tension between his wounds and his potential, his fears and his desire for connection. You are that woman. You have the extraordinary ability to look into a man's spirit and sense the parts he hides even from himself. Not because you're intrusive, but because you're intuitive. You see when he is speaking from his heart and when he is speaking from his fear. You sense the truth behind his hesitation, the softness behind his defenses, the longing behind his emotional distance. And this is precisely why some men feel both drawn to you and overwhelmed by you. You don't fall for the mask. You don't get distracted by the performance. You don't cling to the version of him he tries to project. You see the contradiction within him, the man he is and the man he could be. Your insight is not judgment, it is awareness. And awareness is something many people avoid because it demands accountability. You see through him because you have seen through yourself. You have walked through your own shadows. You have confronted your own illusions. You have faced the truth of your own patterns. You have healed enough to trust your intuition instead of gaslighting your own sensitivity. Your perception is the gift you earned through pain. And the world often fears what pain has refined. When a woman sees through a man, he has two choices. He can rise to the version of himself she sees, or he can run from the reflection she reveals. Some men flee not because they do not care, but because they cannot bear the responsibility of becoming the man their spirit whispers they could be. Others step closer, not because they are perfect, but because they are willing. You are not seeking a man without wounds. You are seeking a man without denial. The truth is, your ability to see through him is not a threat. It is liberation. You do not expose his weaknesses to shame him. You expose his potential to remind him. But here is the part that requires your deepest knowing. Just because you see through a man does not mean you must save him. Your intuition is a compass, not a leash, a guide, not a burden. Some people are meant to be understood but not held, seen but not kept, recognized but not carried. Because when a woman sees clearly, she understands what love is and what love is not. She understands what requires patience and what requires distance. She understands that growth must be chosen, not forced. As you grow more attuned to your own clarity, you learn to invest your insight in those who are willing to meet it. This is the beauty of your perception. It draws out the truth in others. But the deeper beauty is this: your insight returns you to yourself. Because when you can see through someone else, you can no longer ignore your own boundaries, your own values, your own emotional needs. Which brings you to the next revelation. A truth rooted not in the mind, but in the soul itself. When you see clearly, you stop chasing anything that was never meant to be held. And that clarity leads you into the next evolution of your power. 6. You don't fight for attention. It flows to you. There is something profoundly magnetic about a woman who no longer competes for attention, approval, or validation. You have reached the point where you no longer ask, who will notice me? Instead, you ask, who aligns with me? And in that shift, everything changes. Attention becomes effortless. Energy becomes reciprocal. Connection becomes natural. Because when a woman stops chasing, she becomes the one who is sought. When she stops performing, she becomes the one who is admired. When she stops begging, she becomes the one who is chosen by those who are ready. You stopped fighting for attention because you finally understood something essential: that attention earned through struggle must always be maintained through struggle. And you are no longer interested in relationships that drain your spirit just to breathe. You no longer enter rooms hoping someone will see you. You enter rooms asking if you see yourself there, if you feel aligned, if your soul is at peace, if your intuition says yes. This shift creates a power that is quiet, yet undeniable. Men notice a woman who doesn't chase. They notice a woman who chooses. They notice a woman who holds herself with gentle confidence, as if her presence is a gift, not a request. This is not the kind of attention built on physical appearance alone. This is the attention built on energy. Your energy tells a story before you speak. It tells the world, I am whole, I am grounded, I am not intimidated by my own worth. And that energy draws people in, not because you need them, but because your authenticity gives them permission to be more themselves too. You no longer crumble to be loved. You no longer bend to be accepted. You no longer shrink to fit someone's comfort. Your presence is a boundary in itself. Your energy is a filter. Your standards are a shield. You attract without begging, because you are aligned, because you are aware, because you are willing to walk away from anything that dishonors your peace. And as you embrace this truth, you realize something even deeper. Attention is not the reward. Alignment is, respect is, peace is, reciprocity is. Because you no longer want to be seen. You want to be understood. You no longer want to be desired. You want to be respected. You no longer want to be admired. You want to be met. A woman like you does not chase. She attracts. She invites. She embodies. And your energy whispers a truth that echoes long after you leave the room. I am not here to be chosen by everyone. I am here to be recognized by the few who can see me. And now, standing in this deeper self-knowing, you begin to understand the real mystery of your presence. You don't fight for attention because your spirit has become its own light. And that light will guide you into the next evolution of your becoming. 7. Keynote 7. The moment you realize you were never asking for too much. There comes a quiet moment in every person's life. A moment when the noise settles, the breath drops back into the body, and the mind becomes still enough to finally hear the truth that was whispering beneath every disappointment. You were never asking for too much. You were simply asking the wrong people. And when this realization rises, it doesn't come with anger or bitterness or the desire to prove anything. It comes like a soft dawn after a long dark night. It comes like that subtle warmth you feel before the sun even lifts above the horizon. The promise that light is returning, that clarity is arriving, that the days ahead will no longer resemble the days behind. Because the heart, when it is tired, doesn't crave extravagance. It doesn't crave perfection. It doesn't even crave reassurance. What the heart truly longs for is to be met. Met with presence, met with sincerity, met with effort, met with someone who doesn't see your needs as demands, your emotions as inconveniences, or your standards as obstacles. But this revelation only arrives after you have tried, really tried. You tried to shrink yourself so no one felt overwhelmed. You tried to dilute your love so no one felt pressured. You tried to soften your voice so no one felt confronted. And you tried to give more than you received because you hoped maybe giving more would teach someone else how to give back. But the truth is, if you have to teach someone how to value you, they will never value you in a way that feels natural to your soul. And so the moment arrives, not with fireworks, not with rage, but with a gentle exhale, a release, a knowing, a soft but powerful acknowledgement you were not too much. They were simply not enough for the depth of who you are. And once you understand this, something inside you shifts. You stop apologizing for the space you take up. You stop dimming the glow of your spirit. You stop begging for crumbs in relationships that should have been feasts. And you begin, perhaps for the first time, to stand in the fullness of who you are without guilt, without shrinking, without waiting, without accommodating yourself out of existence. It's in this transformation that you realize life has been preparing you for something far greater than mere acceptance. It has been preparing you for recognition, for resonance, for alignment, for people who don't just care about you, but understand you. And that is where everything begins to change. Because once the heart recognizes its own worth, it will never settle for the shadows of love again. It will wait for the presence of it. It will wait for the truth of it. It will wait for the kind of connection that does not require you to abandon yourself, to keep it. And as this awareness deepens, you suddenly see your past not as a series of failures, but as a map guiding you back home to yourself, a map showing you the path where your soul was asking to be honored, cherished, and chosen, not reluctantly but wholeheartedly. And this quiet, grounded recognition is where your power truly returns, because the moment you stop chasing what does not choose you is the moment your life becomes open to everything that will. You stop running after closed doors. You stop grieving the tables where your seat was never meant to be. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Your energy shifts, your spirit rises, your boundaries strengthen. And suddenly, without forcing anything, you begin to attract people whose hearts are shaped in a way that fits the rhythm of your own. Because that is the secret. The right people do not find you demanding, they find you refreshing. The right people do not find you intense, they find you honest. The right people do not find you too much, they find you exactly what they have been searching for. And as you embrace this truth, your entire world expands. But here is the question that begins to whisper next. A question that leads us straight into the next revelation. What happens when you finally stop running after people and life starts running towards you? Keep listening. 8. Keynote. When life stops testing you and starts trusting you. There's a stage of inner evolution where the challenges that once consumed you no longer have the same power. Not because life has become easier, but because you have become wiser, softer, sharper, and more awake. You begin to notice that the storms you survived didn't just strengthen you, they refined you. They stripped away illusions, attachments, and old identities that were no longer aligned with who you are becoming. And as this transformation stabilizes, something extraordinary begins to happen. Life stops testing you and starts trusting you. You feel it first in the subtle ways, in the conversations you no longer engage in the invitations you politely decline, in the arguments you refuse to participate in the emotional battles you choose not to revisit. Peace becomes your first language. Clarity becomes your anchor. Discernment becomes your protection. And suddenly, you realize that you no longer respond to the world from wounds, but from wisdom. Where you once reacted, now you breathe. Where you once clung tightly, now you release easily. Where you once feared endings, now you trust transitions. Because you finally understand that when life removes something, it is not taking from you, it is making space for what belongs to you. And the more you trust this process, the more life reveals its generosity. But there is something deeper happening beneath the surface. Life is not just trusting you, it is preparing you for what? For the next chapter, one where your emotional maturity becomes your compass. Your boundaries become your protection. Your intuition becomes your guide. And your purpose becomes your direction. In this stage, relationships shift. You stop trying to rescue people from their storms. You stop pretending you can heal someone who refuses to pick up their own wounds. You stop dragging dead weight into the future you are building. You begin honoring the truth that healing is not something you force into others. It is something they must choose themselves. And strangely, this realization doesn't make you colder. It makes you kinder. It makes you more compassionate. It makes you capable of love without losing yourself in the process. Because now you understand that the greatest love you can offer anyone is the version of yourself that is whole, not wounded, not desperate, not afraid. And as you embody this version of yourself, something else begins to shift. Your presence becomes powerful, not in a loud or intimidating way, but in a grounded, steady, magnetic way. People feel it, they sense it, they recognize the calmness in your voice, the certainty in your boundaries, the purity of your intentions, and those who once played with your emotions suddenly realize they no longer have access to the version of you they manipulated, because that version is gone. You outgrew them. You outgrew the patterns. You outgrew the insecurities that once held you hostage. And now you are ready for a different kind of life. A life that doesn't drain you, confuse you, diminish you, or require you to abandon yourself. A life that aligns with your spirit. But with this new level of clarity, another truth emerges. A truth that leads to the next revelation when life starts granting you peace. Are you willing to protect it, even if it costs you everything familiar? Let us go deeper. 9. Keynote 9. Protecting your peace, even when it costs you people. Peace is not passive. Peace is not silence. Peace is not the absence of problems. Peace is a choice, a skill, a discipline, a form of spiritual self-respect. And once life finally hands you the peace you prayed for, cried for, grew for, you must become willing to guard it with a strength you never had before. Not everyone can stay. Not every connection can continue. Not every door can remain open. Because peace demands honesty. It demands that you look at your life and admit who nourishes me, who drains me, who respects my boundaries, who only comes around when they need something, who brings calm to my spirit, who brings chaos to my mind. These questions are uncomfortable, but they are necessary. They are the doorway to emotional freedom. And when you begin to answer them truthfully, the landscape of your relationships begins to shift. Some people fall away naturally, faint echoes of a past version of you. Some drift away because they cannot handle the boundaries you finally enforce. Some leave because they were attached to your wounds, not your healing. And though it hurts, though the heart feels the sting of every departure, you begin to understand that losing people is not the tragedy you once thought it was. The real tragedy is losing yourself just to keep people who were never meant to stay. And so, you begin to choose differently, more intentionally, more gently, more courageously. You choose the conversations that uplift you. You choose the environments that support you. You choose the relationships that honor you. You choose the path that leads to your emotional well-being, even if it means walking away from familiar hands that can no longer carry your future. This is the price of peace, but it is also the path to transformation. Because when you protect your peace, you protect your clarity, you protect your energy, you protect your destiny, you protect the version of yourself you worked so hard to become. And life, seeing this commitment, begins to open doors that were previously hidden. New friendships, new connections, new opportunities, new inner strength. But here lies the most powerful truth of all. Peace is not something you find. Peace is something you build. And whatever you build, you must learn to defend, even if others don't understand, even if they call you distant, even if they accuse you of changing, because you have changed. You were meant to. You were designed to evolve. And there is one final truth that lingers, a truth that pulls you into the next evolution of your journey. When you stop chasing chaos, the world doesn't lose you. It finally meets the real you. And that is where everything begins. 10. Keynote 10. When you finally learn what your silence is worth, there comes a moment in your healing journey when silence stops feeling like an absence and begins to feel like a sanctuary. For so long, silence felt like distance. It felt like punishment. It felt like being unheard, unseen, unconsidered. Silence was the space where your mind invented stories, where your fears grew louder, where your insecurities took shape. Silence felt like something done to you. But with time, with reflection, maturity, and a deeper understanding of yourself, something shifts. You begin to see silence not as withdrawal, but as protection. Not as emptiness, but as clarity. Not as weakness, but as wisdom. You discover that not every thought requires expression. Not every emotion requires explanation. Not every wound requires discussion. And not every person deserves access to the tenderness of your inner world. Silence becomes a shield, a meditation, a reclamation of your power. You stop reacting to every provocation. You stop defending yourself against false perceptions. You stop explaining your character to people committed to misunderstanding you. You simply stop bleeding for those who are not willing to bandage themselves. And in that stillness, you begin to hear your own soul again. You hear the whisper you ignored for years, the intuition you silenced, the boundaries you softened, the needs you dismissed because you believed they would drive people away. But when silence becomes your home, you learn that the only thing you ever lost by speaking your truth was the people who were never meant to hold it. That is the power of this new version of you. You speak less, but mean more. You choose your words, but guard your energy. You share your heart, but not with everyone. And slowly, you realize something profound. Your silence has value. Your silence has weight. Your silence has dignity. It speaks louder than your explanations, louder than your arguments, louder than your attempts to prove yourself. Because silence reveals the truth, you no longer need validation to feel whole. You no longer chase closure to feel at peace. You no longer abandon yourself just to be understood. You have become your own confirmation, your own reassurance, your own peace. And once you taste that kind of inner stability, you can never return to the chaos you once normalized. But here is the irony. Your silence doesn't distance you from life. It brings you closer to it. It brings you closer to wisdom, to clarity, to discernment, to the gentle truths that were always waiting beneath the noise. This is when life begins to open new doors. Because life recognizes the ones who no longer run from themselves. And yet, with this newfound power comes another realization. One that leads us into the next chapter of your evolution. If your silence has value, what happens when your presence gains meaning? Stay with me. 11. Keynote 11. The power of your presence when you stop chasing love. When you stop chasing love, something extraordinary happens. Your presence, the very energy of who you are, begins to shift. You become lighter, yet deeper, softer, yet stronger, still, yet undeniably powerful. Because when you stop chasing love, you stop negotiating the worth of your soul. You stop bending your truth to fit someone else's comfort. You stop shrinking your light so others won't feel insecure. You stop carrying relationships that were never meant to be sustained by one person alone. You begin to understand that love is not earned through suffering. It is not achieved through endurance. It is not a prize given for patience or emotional labor. Love is a mirror. It reflects what is true. It aligns with what is real. It flows toward what matches its frequency. And when you stop chasing love, your frequency rises. You no longer vibrate from wounds. You vibrate from wisdom. You vibrate from self-respect. You vibrate from emotional maturity. Your presence becomes intentional. It becomes curated. It becomes sacred. Not everyone has access anymore. Not everyone is invited. Not everyone is allowed to stand close enough to dim what you have risen from. Your presence becomes something people feel, not because you are trying to prove anything, but because you have nothing left to prove. Your energy says, I know who I am without your approval. I know what I offer without your applause. I know my worth without your validation. And suddenly, those who once overlooked you feel the absence of what they took for granted. Those who once dismissed you feel the weight of your distance. Those who thought you would always be available realize they were mistaken. Because when you stop chasing love, you become the kind of person love chases. You become magnetic, not because of your appearance, not because of your charm, but because of your emotional gravity. You attract people who value depth, people who understand devotion, people who have done their own inner work, people who will meet you where you are, not drag you back to who you used to be. This is the shift that changes everything. Your presence becomes a filter. The wrong people fall away. The right people stay effortlessly. And you rise. But with this rising comes a question that pulls you toward the next revelation. If your presence is now your power, what happens when your purpose starts calling your name? Let us continue. 12. Keynote 12. When your purpose becomes louder than your pain, there is a moment, quiet, subtle, almost imperceptible, when your purpose begins to speak louder than your pain. You feel it first in the small ways, in the mornings that become easier, in the thoughts that become clearer, in the decisions that once felt heavy but now feel guided. Something inside you is shifting. Something ancient, something sacred, something deeply aligned. Your purpose begins awakening. Not the purpose others projected onto you, not the roles you were expected to play, not the identities you carried out of obligation or fear, but the purpose that hid beneath every wound you survived, the purpose that waited patiently while you healed, the purpose that was shaped, refined, strengthened by every heartbreak, every disappointment, every ending you thought would break you. You begin to see that nothing was random, nothing was wasted, nothing was meaningless. Your pain was not a punishment, it was preparation. It was sculpting your character, deepening your compassion, strengthening your spirit, sharpening your intuition. Every tear watered the soil of who you were becoming. Every betrayal forced you inward, back to the truth, back to your soul, back to your path. And now, your purpose rises. It rises in your voice, steadier, wiser, more authentic. It rises in your choices, clearer, sharper, more intentional. It rises in your boundaries, stronger, healthier, more grounded. It rises in your relationships, aligned, reciprocal, genuine. Your purpose becomes louder than your fear, louder than your self-doubt, louder than the opinions of people who never understood your calling. You begin to walk differently, not quickly but confidently, not anxiously but consciously. You trust the timing, you trust the unfolding, you trust the whispers that guide you in moments of uncertainty, because now you understand that purpose is not a destination. Purpose is a voice, a pull, a rhythm, a knowing. It is the gentle push that moves you forward, even when the path is unclear. It is the inner fire that refuses to let you quit, even when the world feels heavy. And as your purpose becomes louder than your pain, you start living from a place of alignment instead of survival, from a place of intention instead of reaction, from a place of clarity instead of confusion. You stop asking, what do people want from me? And begin asking, what is my soul asking of me? And that shift, that sacred shift, changes the course of your entire life. It opens doors you didn't know existed. It attracts opportunities you never thought possible. It draws people who recognize your spirit, not just your profile. It becomes the moment where everything you lost is replaced with everything you are destined to find. And yet, as powerful as this awakening is, the journey is not over. Because now that your purpose has awakened, another question begins to rise, a question that invites you deeper into the next stage. If your purpose is calling, are you ready to answer? 13. Keynote 13. When you stop apologizing for your light, there is a very specific moment in a woman's life when she stops apologizing for her light. Not because she becomes louder, not because she becomes harder, but because she finally realizes that dimming herself never protected her. It only imprisoned her. For years, you softened yourself to make others comfortable. You held back your brilliance so someone else wouldn't feel insecure. You hid your talents, your dreams, your strengths, because you were terrified of being too much. You made yourself small to protect the egos of people who were threatened by what was natural, effortless, and beautiful in you. But then, slowly, almost quietly, you began to outgrow that self-shrinking version of yourself. You started noticing how your soul felt heavier every time you lowered your voice. You started noticing how your spirit dimmed every time you pretended you didn't know your own power. You started noticing how your joy faded every time you betrayed your own brilliance just to keep the peace. And eventually a truth rose from within you like a tide that could no longer be held back. You were never too much. You were simply in rooms that were too small. Your light was never the issue. It was the fear of those who stood in its glow. There is nothing dangerous about a woman who shines, unless you are attached to a world that prefers her silent. But your silence has meaning now. Your voice has purpose now. Your presence has weight now. You stopped apologizing for your intelligence, because intelligence is not arrogance. You stopped apologizing for your standards, because standards are not demands. They are reflections of self-worth. You stopped apologizing for your boundaries, because boundaries are not walls. They are doors that determine who is allowed to enter your life. And as you rose, you discovered this beautiful truth. Your light is not just for you. It is for every woman who still thinks she must hide. It is for every younger version of yourself who prayed someone like you would show her the way. It is for every soul who would one day be changed, simply by witnessing your courage to be yourself. When you stopped apologizing for your light, you stepped into a version of yourself that cannot be manipulated, cannot be controlled, cannot be dimmed. Because a woman who owns her brilliance becomes untouchable, not hard, not proud. Untouchable because she no longer internalizes the insecurities of others. And with that freedom comes something unexpected. When you stop apologizing for your light, you begin attracting those who were searching for it. Because you were not meant for the ones who felt threatened. You were meant for the ones who feel awakened. And yet, with all this rising, glowing, expanding energy, a deeper transformation begins to stir inside you. One that moves beyond your light and into something even more sacred. What happens when you not only stop apologizing, but start celebrating the woman you've become? Let's walk into that next truth together. 14. Keynote 14. When you finally recognize the woman you've become, there comes a morning. You may not remember the date, you may not remember the season, but you will remember the feeling. A morning when you look at yourself and you no longer see the woman who doubted every step, who questioned every decision, who shrank to protect others, who poured herself empty to keep love alive. You look at yourself, and for the first time, you see the woman you fought to become, the woman who survived battles no one knew she was fighting, the woman who carried burdens that would have broken others, the woman who learned to breathe through storms that were meant to drown her. You see her, not the wounds, not the struggles, not the mistakes, but the evolution, the becoming. You recognize the woman who stopped settling for half love and started demanding full presence. The woman who stopped chasing validation and started honoring her intuition. The woman who stopped begging for consistency and started embodying emotional clarity. You see her strength now, not the loud strength that announces itself, but the quiet strength that has nothing left to prove. You see her softness, not the softness that breaks easily, but the softness that bends without losing itself. You see her wisdom, not the wisdom taught by books, but the wisdom carved by experience, by heartbreak, by resilience. For the first time in your life, you stand in front of the mirror and whisper, I know her, I trust her, I love her. And this recognition changes everything. Because when you finally recognize the woman you've become, you stop apologizing for the choices that shaped you. You stop regretting the paths that taught you. You stop mourning the chapters that ended, because they gave birth to the woman who stands today. You begin to live from clarity instead of confusion, from wholeness instead of wounds, from intention instead of instinct. You stop asking, am I good enough for them? And start asking, are they aligned with the woman I've become? Your relationships change. Your boundaries change. Your standards change. Your energy changes. And so does your future. Because the moment you recognize who you've become, you stop returning to who you used to be. And yet, as profound as this recognition is, another truth gently begins rising inside you. A truth even deeper, quieter, and more transformative. If you can finally see the woman you've become, can you now trust what she deserves? Let's step into that revelation. 15. Keynote 15. When you trust what you deserve without fear. Trusting what you deserve is one of the most powerful and often most terrifying transformations a woman can experience. Because trusting what you deserve means letting go of every version of yourself that accepted less. It means stepping away from relationships that drained your spirit, even when they felt familiar. It means releasing fears that kept you small, even when they felt protective. It means choosing alignment, even when alignment requires loss. Trusting what you deserve requires courage, not the courage to fight, but the courage to receive. To receive respect without suspicion. To receive love without bracing for hurt. To receive consistency without doubting motives. To receive abundance without shrinking in guilt. This kind of trust is not naive. It is an act of inner expansion. It is the moment you stop preparing for disappointment and start preparing for blessings. It is the moment you stop expecting scarcity and start expecting reciprocity. It is the moment you stop settling for almost and start choosing absolutely, because you finally understand that you are not hard to love. You were simply trying to be loved by people incapable of loving you deeply. You are not asking for too much. You are asking the wrong people. Trusting what you deserve means you no longer negotiate your standards. You no longer justify your boundaries. You no longer explain why you require effort, honesty, or intention. You simply embody the woman who knows she deserves them. And this embodiment changes everything. It changes how you walk into a room. It changes how you speak your truth. It changes how you give your heart, not recklessly, but consciously. You begin to attract emotionally mature connections. Because you have become emotionally mature yourself. You begin to attract peaceful relationships because you have cultivated peace within yourself. You begin to attract partners who choose you fully because you choose yourself without hesitation. And with this trust comes a quiet revelation, one that feels like both an answer and an invitation. When you trust what you deserve, you stop chasing what isn't yours. You stop begging for clarity from those who communicate in confusion. You stop waiting for effort from those who thrive in inconsistency. You stop hoping for growth from those committed to staying the same. Because now you understand something sacred. What is meant for you will never require you to betray yourself. And when that understanding becomes your foundation, you begin walking into a future that is aligned with your worth, not your wounds. And from here, from this new trust, this new identity, this new light, a deeper truth begins calling your spirit forward. If you trust what you deserve, are you ready to receive what life has been waiting to give you? 16. You do not demand love, you inspire it. There comes a moment in every woman's life when she finally understands that love was never something she had to beg for. Not when she was younger, not when she was wounded, not when she was unprepared for her own worth, not even on the days when she believed she needed to shrink herself just to be held by someone else's approval. There is a moment, often after a long journey through the shadows of disappointment, where you finally rise into yourself and whisper, "I never had to demand what was meant to be freely given." Love is not a currency. It is not a negotiation. It is not a bargain you make in the dim corners of your loneliness. Love, real love, it is a natural response to authenticity. When you become a woman whose presence feels like peace, whose energy is grounded, whose soul knows her own echo, something begins to happen around you. You stop chasing affection, and affection begins gravitating toward you. You stop pleading for attention, and attention starts turning in your direction almost effortlessly. Not because you learned a trick, not because you memorized a rule book, not because you finally became enough, but because you finally became yourself. See, there is a difference between someone wanting you because you persuaded them, and someone wanting you because your very existence awakens something noble in them. When you inspire love, it is no longer a transaction, it becomes a reflection. You are no longer asking to be chosen. You are reminding them how powerful it feels to choose with clarity. And here's the truth. Many never understand. A woman who inspires love is not loud. She is not forceful. She is not desperate. She simply lives from the quiet flame within her. And that flame is unmistakable. When she walks into a man's life, she doesn't beg him to see her. He sees her because his soul instinctively recognizes something rare. It recognizes calm, integrity, depth, and the quiet strength that tells him, without saying a single word, "If you cannot love me with honesty, do not love me at all." A woman who inspires love is not chasing, she is choosing. She is not demanding, she is demonstrating. She is not proving, she is becoming. Her worth is no longer tied to how others treat her, but by how fiercely she chooses to honor her own spirit. And that is why she inspires love, instead of asking for it. Because love gravitates toward wholeness, and she has finally returned to her own. The energy she gives is the energy others want to rise to. Her presence makes someone want to become more honest, more aware, more thoughtful, more alive. This is why she does not demand love, because love becomes the natural echo of who she is. And yet, as beautiful as this is, it leads to a deeper truth, one that many women only discover after they rise into this inspired, powerful version of themselves. A truth that whispers, if you inspire love, then you are not just someone he meets, you become someone he transforms for. And that takes us into the next revelation. 17. You are not a chapter, you are a transformation. There is a profound difference between being a chapter in someone's life and being the moment their entire story changes direction. A chapter passes. A transformation reshapes everything that comes after it. When you begin to live as a woman who inspires love rather than demands it, you shift from being a temporary experience to becoming the turning point in someone's evolution. You become the moment someone realizes their old patterns are no longer enough. You become the gentle force that wakes them from the sleep they didn't know they were in. Some women are remembered, but some women are never forgotten. They are the women whose presence alters a man's entire sense of what love should feel like. Not because she tried to change him, but because her existence reveals how deeply he wants to change himself. You are not a chapter. You are not a phase. You are not a time in someone's life. You are the moment the mirror stops lying. The moment the excuses lose their power. The moment a man sees exactly who he could be and who he refuses to be ever again. You are the woman whose energy forces clarity. Clarity about his behavior. Clarity about his intentions. Clarity about the parts of him he has avoided confronting. You do not offer comfort without responsibility. You do not offer connection without accountability. You do not offer your soul without observing his willingness to honor it. And that alone creates transformation. Because when a woman who has healed, who has grown, who has expanded into herself, comes into a man's life, she becomes the catalyst. She becomes the threshold between his past and his potential. She is the place where he realizes, I can't stay the same and keep her. Not because she forces him, but because his spirit cannot remain small in the presence of a woman who lives fully. A chapter is something people move through. A transformation is something people rise into. A chapter is read and forgotten. A transformation changes the reader permanently. You are not here to be a page someone turns. You are not here to be a temporary escape from someone's unhealed wounds. You are here to be the moment they decide to confront what they've avoided for years. You are the interruption, the awakening, the shift. You are not just someone he wants. You are someone who challenges him to become worthy of wanting. And that leads to the next truth, a truth that explains why some men tremble, hesitate, or retreat when they meet a woman like you. Because the fear was never you. It was what you required from his soul. And that brings us to the next revelation. Because sometimes a man is not afraid of your power. He is afraid of the transformation he must undergo to stand beside it. 18. A man is not afraid of you. He is afraid of what he must become to deserve you. This is the truth most women never realize. A man is rarely intimidated by a woman herself. He is intimidated by the version of himself he knows he must become in her presence. See, when a woman lives with depth, clarity, grace, and integrity, she does not intimidate through dominance. She intimidates through alignment. She stands in her value so firmly that anything less than sincerity becomes impossible to hide. And some men are not ready for that level of visibility. You reflect him back to himself, his maturity, his inconsistencies,